Our first presentation today is going to be about understanding indoor cockroaches. We have a full day of cockroaches for you, so buckle up. I'll be presenting today's presentation. So the first thing that I want to mention, and I will put the link to this in the chat after I finish my session today. We had a previous presentation by Susanna Crisco, who's now part of our IPM program at Cornell. And she did a great job talking about the integrated pest management of these pests, talking about the different products that are available for use and how they're implemented. So I do encourage you to check out this video if you have questions about cockroach control. Today, I will be talking more about the behavior and biology and a specific approach to managing them. So I want to start with the basics because I want to orient you to this group of pests. When we think about cockroaches, a lot of people are disgusted by them. They are fearful of them, and we are living with them in our structures as invasive species, right? They originate in tropical parts of the world. If you go to the tropics, if you ever visit the tropics, you will see a wide variety of cockroach species. But the ones that we have adapted to living with people. So they still have preferences for warm areas and food availability. They're often nocturnal, and they are a prey species. And that's why I've included this image here. You could see an American cockroach that's being consumed by a gecko. Even though we are fearful of them and they are really disgusting to us, they are a food item for a variety of animals in nature. And so their goal is to hide and move as fast as possible to avoid being consumed by predators. If we want to identify a cockroach compared to other critters, there's a few things that we can look at to quickly differentiate them. The first is going to be what's called the pronotum. This is a shield-shaped structure that's right behind the head. As we'll look at 2 or 3 different cockroaches today, there's identifying features of that pronotum that can help differentiate the species. They also have a very flattened body, and that allows them to get into those tight cracks and crevices where they can avoid detection or predation by a number of critters. In general, their body is oval shaped. Most adults have wings. You could see here in this cockroach, the wings go past the tip of the abdomen, so nice long wings. And they have these really long thread-like antennae that have a bunch of sensors on them that help them detect food and pheromones, but really long thread-like antennae. For their development, they have what's known as gradual metamorphosis, where the nymphal stage looks very similar to the adult stage. The nymphs, in this case, are much smaller than the adults, and then the adult has often large wings. Cockroaches are very cryptic. They're able to enter very small openings, so 1.6 millimeters is about the thickness of your credit card, and that's the size that these cockroaches, especially German cockroaches, can fit into. Surprisingly, they spend most of their lifetime in that small crack or crevice. So up to 75% of life is in those cracks and crevices. They're interacting with other cockroaches, they're sharing secretions, they are potentially mating in those spaces, and they're only coming out to forage and also expand their territory and potentially mate. So some interesting behaviors about cockroaches is that they actually prefer to be in areas where they are tight up against multiple surfaces. So we see a very compressed American cockroach here in this image, and that's a behavior called thigmotaxis, where they're attracted to being compressed by structures on multiple sides. It makes them feel safe. Um, they also have aggregations. So cockroaches are not like ants or bees and wasps where they may have a nest or a colony where they're all related individuals. Instead, they form these aggregations where they all hang out in the same place. And to orient themselves, to those places, they'll use chemical cues to attract others. And that's what all this brown fecal spotting is, okay? Yes, it's their poop. Yes, it's disgusting. But that is what's telling the other cockroaches that this is an area where cockroaches are hanging out. It's safe. Come on in. So why are cockroaches a problem? Yes, they're disgusting, but each one of those fecal spots can contain enough allergens to sensitize and sustain allergic reactions in people, resulting in asthma and other symptoms. So they're public health pests contributing to asthma symptoms for people in urban and suburban areas alike. School children are exposed to allergens potentially at home, potentially in school environments, leading to some serious outcomes for their exposure and learning and having negative results of those exposures. The allergens can be contained in the feces and exoskeletons as well as the saliva of these animals. We also know that cockroaches can be mechanical vectors of pathogens. Um, They've done some swabbing of the outside of cockroach bodies and also examined the gut contents and found that German cockroaches, for example, are associated with about 50 different pathogens that can affect people, ranging from bacteria to parasites and even fungi. A mechanical vector is something that will walk through something disgusting and then move that, for example, bacteria from a decaying organic material to a food preparation site. And then the last one, which really gives me the heebie-jeebies, is that there are situations where cockroach populations are so high that they actually get stuck in people's ears. And in really bad infestations, they will consume the hairs on people's faces, so eyelashes and eyebrows. If you have a cockroach infestation that bad, you're well aware of it. This isn't something that's going to happen overnight, but certainly disgusting and disturbing. So the main cockroaches, we're just going to go through them real quick to identify them so people are aware of what they are and not confusing them with other critters that may be found in their home. So the German cockroach is the most common indoor infesting cockroach. It's about a half an inch long, and it has these two black stripes on that pronotum right behind the head. So very easy to identify them compared to the other common cockroaches we'll see indoors. Their feces are those black specks. You could see them here along this electrical outlet. They prefer those tight cracks and crevices, and there might be some heat associated with electrical outlets, so they preferentially will have an aggregation there. Their egg cases are about a third of an inch long and tan. Mom will produce this egg case and then hold on to it for a while until it's just about ready to hatch. And then she'll deposit it with up to 48 offspring coming out of each egg case. So really tremendous reproductive potential of these guys. When they come in, if it's just a single female that has an egg case, you can start an infestation from one individual. Their preferred habitat are going to be cracks and crevices near warmth and food. So kitchens and bathrooms are often the types of areas where we see this cockroach. And when they are established, you get to recognize these fecal focal points, which have lots of feces concentrated in small areas. Our second cockroach that's of concern indoors is the American cockroach. You might have called this guy the water bug. If you're in Florida or if you've visited Florida, you might have heard them referred to as the palmetto bug. They're all the same species of cockroach. They're the largest indoor infesting cockroach, ranging to about 2 inches. They're reddish brown in color. They have a yellowish pronotum with two dark marks towards the head. Um, their feces can be confused with mouse droppings. So it's really important if you're finding droppings like this in a basement, especially if you're in a multifamily housing building that has steam heat coming in. that you're looking at those droppings carefully and noticing that it has blunt ends and also lines that go from tip to tip. Um, their egg case looks very different. It's dark brown in color, more purse-shaped, and they can have up to 16 offspring in those egg cases. So still good reproductive potential, but not as much as the German cockroach. Their preferred habitats are a little bit different. They use unused or dry plumbing as navigation pathways. So one of the easiest ways to prevent them from coming up into your bathroom, if you have had that experience, is to ensure that pipes that are no longer in use are capped, that there's good seal at the wall where pipes go into walls, and if there's an unused or infrequently used toilet in your basement, for example, that you make sure that it gets flushed at some regularity to maintain water in that structure so they can't easily climb up. They're very commonly associated with broken sewer pipes and waste lines. So what is the approach to cockroach management? Let's say you found this critter in your home. If you feel encouraged to participate, you can. What would be your first step? What is the first thing that you would do if you found this specific cockroach in your home? Give me a second. I don't see any thoughts coming in except for everyone's new fear about cockroaches in ears. Step on it, scream. Okay, I don't blame you. ID it. Thank you, Timothy. So that is going to be the most important part of any cockroach um, situation, right? Is that we correctly identify the pest. Because this particular cockroach isn't even a structure invading pest. This is a wood cockroach. They live outdoors in the leaf litter. Females look like this, where they have very short wings. They can't fly. They will never leave decaying organic leaf material. But the adult male can fly, and at nighttime in the summer, they can be attracted to lights. So if you have your kitchen light on overnight and you have your windows open because it's a nice summer evening, you may get this cockroach landing on your window, landing on your door. You open that door to let the dogs out, and now you have a cockroach in the house. You find it, you freak out, you call pest control, and they might not accurately identify it, or they might not see the pest that you squished and try to apply a service that you don't need, because this cockroach is never going to infest your home. So identification is the most important step that we can take when we start a cockroach management program. The next thing that we want to consider is determining the status. So we want to make sure that we're not dealing with an infestation. An infestation is described more or less as a situation where there's reproduction actively occurring. So in this picture on the right, you could see that there's an adult. It's got wings. These wings are crinkled because they've been exposed to a pest management product. But we also see the juvenile stages. So we have multiple life stages, meaning that we probably have reproduction going on. Our approach is going to be very different if we have an active infestation with reproduction versus an introduction where one or more individuals were either brought in or accidentally made their way into the site. So that's the second step. We want to determine if we have an introduction or an infestation. We can determine the source by figuring out if it's an introduction or infestation. So if we are in unconnected housing, we have a standalone home, it's 100% possible that German cockroaches get brought into your home from a delivery, from you going to the grocery store, using your own bags and picking up a box and putting it in your cart. Um, Items in the grocery store could have cockroaches on them and they could be brought into the home. So deliveries and purchases could be the source of cockroaches. Um, if you're in connected housing, multifamily housing, you have an apartment above a retail store, those cockroaches could actually be coming from building connections where they are moving between walls, using walls as a superhighway, and then coming out around plumbing and other utility chases. Our fourth step is going to be considering informed management. So if we have an introduction, our first step, determine the source, then we're going to monitor and not panic. Okay, we don't want to go crazy and purchase products and start spraying everything before we know what's happening if it was just an introduction versus an infestation. If it is an infestation, then we want to find the harborage. We can use a vacuum to remove up to 50% of the individuals that are in that population, and then use some of the management strategies that Susanna talks about in her presentation to eliminate the population. So if you want to take this route of vacuuming, there's a really cool technique you can use to prevent your vacuum from becoming infested. You can use knee-high stockings, put that into the end of your vacuum. You could start the vacuum to sort of pull it into the vacuum and then put on the crack and crevice tool. Now, as you're vacuuming, anything that you suck up is going to get stuck in that knee-high stocking, which when you're done, you simply pull it off and tie it and throw them out. This is also a good technique if you get ladybugs in your home, box elder bugs, stink bugs. It might make your vacuum smell a little bit, but you will be able to isolate those insects without getting them stuck in the vacuum cleaner. The next thing that we want to consider is to prevent cockroaches. So if we're in unconnected housing, a standalone home, for example, we want to inspect incoming goods to make sure that we don't have any cockroaches on them. We want to recognize pest evidence. So for example, those brown fecal spots from the German cockroach could be on a box as we're buying something at the store. So we want to be able to recognize that, and then reduce attractive items that are present in the home. One of the most attractive items that we can keep in our home is going to be something like stacked paper, brown paper bags like we see here, or stacked cardboard. Now, this is not going to attract those pests to your home, but if your home has those items and insects are introduced, they could find themselves living in there, and that could develop into an infestation. So it's an attractive condition, but not something that's going to attract them into the home. In connected housing, we want to seal entry points and pathways. So a quick and easy thing to do is put an escutcheon plate around all those pipe and utility chases, and then use some kind of monitoring to see if there's an introduction into our living spaces from connected units. So real quickly here, as I end up my time, I'm going to blast through some management do's and don'ts, and we'll start with the don'ts. There's great evidence that the total release foggers, the bug bombs that you can buy at the store, are completely ineffective at managing indoor pests. They don't manage cockroaches, they don't manage bed bugs, and those are the two common targets that people try to use them for. So do not use total release foggers. I advocate to not use over-the-counter sprays. In many cases, if you can use a spray bottle to spray that organism, you might as well just use a shoe to guarantee that you're going to kill it. A lot of the over-the-counter sprays are only effective, especially the natural products, if you actually hit that organism. So it's not going to have any long-term residual activity. Do not use home remedies. We've had some presentations in this series that talk about the dangers of home remedies, and I encourage you to check that out. Home remedies are things that, mix this and this that are already in your house, and it's perfectly okay to do. Well, in a lot of those cases, that may not be true, and you can cause more harm than good. So don't use home remedies, and don't follow internet advice. There's a lot of misinformation out there. So the things you should do, good sanitation and cleaning for the structure infesting cockroaches like the German and American cockroach. Eliminating their food source is the best first step you can take. Exclusion and prevention to keep them from moving into or moving within a space. Using baits that are available for purchase is a great approach because those baits can have effects on the other individuals in the colony, not just the one individual that feeds on that product. There are ready-to-use baits that you can purchase at the store, as well as professional products you could purchase online. For all of the pesticide products, we encourage you to follow the directions very carefully for use. Not only is that intended to help keep you safe, but also to enhance the effectiveness of that product. Desiccant dusts and insecticidal dusts are available for use in specific locations. This is particularly effective if you're living in a multifamily building where there's potential movement in from connected wall spaces. And then finally, monitoring is an essential part of any integrated pest management program. So for cockroaches, we want to learn to recognize the actual problem that contributes to the pest issues, and that's going to be the sanitation issue, and not treat just the symptoms. In this case, if we have German cockroaches, the first thing we need to do is eliminate the food that they're using before we should try and eliminate their population. So that's it for me. We're going to transition in just a second to our IPM Minute speaker so that we can hear about a different type of cockroach. So I'll ask our next speaker to bring up their slides.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay, good.
So while Jody's bringing up her slides, I'll do a quick introduction. So Dr. Jody Gangloff-Kaufmann is the Community IPM Coordinator. And she is going to talk to us today about the tawny cockroach, which is an issue that we're seeing a lot of identification requests and concerns about from all over the country, but especially here in the Northeast. So take it away, Jody.
Okay, and I'm going to try to be fast because I have a lot of information here, but tawny cockroach, yes. I'm wondering how many people out there watching today have seen this. So here, tawny cockroach, it's a really cute, adorable, pretty one. It's also known as the Mediterranean spotted cockroach. It's native to Western Europe and mostly the coastal areas, but as far north as Germany, as far south as North Africa. It's in the same family as German and brown-banded roaches, which we just heard about, and also Pennsylvania wood roach. It's in that same group. And it acts like a Pennsylvania wood roach, to be honest. It was discovered in coastal Massachusetts in 1948. It's like 75, 76 years ago. And it slowly spread, but recently we've seen this, increase in numbers, increase in sightings, and, something's going on. We don't know. Some characteristics of this little roach: they're only 3/8 of an inch long, and they have tan, almost transparent wings. There's a heart shape on the top of the wings, which is really cute and makes it easy to distinguish from other roaches. They have little spots on their bodies, but the spots vary. They have dark eyes, long antennae, the typical cerci of a cockroach. Both males and females can fly, although males have longer wings. They have about a 2-year life cycle and seem to overwinter as nymphs, but I'm not sure we know that, concrete information because I've found adults in the winter. And they may be capable of parthenogenesis, and that could really change the picture. And that means females only, and females giving rise to females entirely. So that could change the population dynamic, if that's true. They tend to hang out in woodland, meadow, and sandy scrubland habitats, just natural habitats with leaf litter. That's where they like to be. But people photograph them all the time on flowers like this, so we assume they're eating pollen and plant matter, whatever. But they will move indoors, and here is a picture, the bigger picture of a shed where they're definitely taking shelter. Who knows what they're eating in there? But the other picture is, tawny cockroach on a cabinet in a kitchen. And so they have these instances where they're moving indoors and they can become a nuisance. This is a photo from a friend's office. It was a makeshift fire marshal's office in a trailer, but they became overrun with these roaches. Here on Long Island it was. And they had to have an exterminator come. So they can become a nuisance. The population trends in the US, they're really hard to track. So the only source of information I could find was iNaturalist. And I know that's just, it's not it's not wholly reliable, but it is a good proxy in my opinion. So what I see is the observations rising slowly from 2013 to 2019 and then rapidly through 2025. And anecdotally, as Matt said, we're seeing more and more reports, more complaints, more what is this bug kind of thing. So here is 2013 in the iNaturalist in just the United States. There were 2 observations. There's one in 2008 as well, but I just skipped to 2013. By 2025, as of, October, we had 744 observations this year alone. And by the end of the year, we're projected at 926 if this trend holds. So this is the data looking at it from a different point. You can see the numbers go up pretty nicely. But when you superimpose the use of iNaturalist, it follows the same trend. So the number of observations in iNaturalist follows the same general trend of doubling, basically, every year, right? And so there are hundreds of millions of iNaturalist users and observations every year. So I decided to compare a recent 1-year period of the observations of all species in the United States and see what the increase was from beginning to end of that year. It's 24% increase. So that represents more and more people contributing to iNaturalist. But if you look at just the tawny cockroach in the same time period, there's a 160% increase in the number of observations. So this isn't terribly scientific, but it does suggest that tawny cockroach observations are increasing faster than the overall observations in iNaturalist. And I think that supports the idea, and what we're saying is that they're becoming more common. Is it invasive? That's a good question. It is an introduced species, we know that. It's not a filth pest like our peridomestic roaches, German, Oriental, American roaches. There's no consequence to agriculture or horticulture at this point that we know. And it's not known to outcompete or negatively affect any wildlife. In fact, it might even contribute to the food sources that birds have. But we are starting to see some negative economic impacts. And 2 in particular, there are 2 oceanside, beachside campgrounds that are popular, the most popular campgrounds at the federal and state level on the East Coast. And people come from across the country. These 2 campgrounds have been inundated to the point where they've had to close, they've lost revenue. People are taking these cockroaches home in their gear, in their tents, their campers, because people tend to bring their gear when they come camping at these places. So, so this has really caught our attention, and the economic losses are part of what makes something invasive. What we don't know, why are they becoming so much more problematic and common? Why are they appearing in people's houses? This one was inside a paper towel roll in a house recently. Could they become a structural or even a pantry pest? And how can we prevent them? How do we monitor them? How do we manage them? We don't even know what kills them. We assume pesticides kill them, but do they take bait? We don't know. And so my summary here is awareness. They're becoming more numerous outdoors and appearing indoors. They're easily spread by people. They might be a candidate for invasive species, but time will tell. And we lack a lot of information about this. So I would love to hear from anyone who has this cockroach around. If you see them, get in touch with me if you want to know more, and participate with iNaturalist if you see them and have a chance to photograph. And that's it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jody. And I'd like to thank everybody for attending today. Thank Jody for her great presentation, and I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend. Take care.